how do you maintain the discipline and the confidence even when doing all the quote unquote right things aren't working? Will you continue to show up or will you quit? And my experience as an athlete, also with entrepreneurs and just with people in general, is that most people are so quick to crumble and quit and fall to pieces when things are not going their way, that usually the most successful people are usually the people who are just the toughest and the grittiest and willing, have the highest level of willingness to keep going even when it's not working.
What if you could reclaim hours of free time each week, create legacy building wealth, and devote more energy to your passion projects without giving up on your career as a life-saving MD? Dr. Vikram Raya is a functional cardiologist, high-performance coach, and real estate expert, is here to give you the tools, strategies, and solutions you need to transform your life, unlock your limitless potential, and achieve greatness, all while freeing up your precious time. Welcome to Limitless MD. Let's dive in.
All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Limitless MD. I'm your host, Vikram Ryan. Today on the podcast, we're going to talk about how to perform at your best, how to get into the mental mindset to dominate the game. And I'm not talking about just sports. I'm not talking about just a career, but all of life. And I have my guest, Dre Baldwin, a 9-year amazing basketball player who's now translated his athlete mindset into the next level by coaching high performers, entrepreneurs, and even doctors into greatness in business and life. Welcome to the podcast, Dre.
Vikram, thank you for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely, my friend. How do you separate yourself from being an amateur to a professional in life?
Well, the most important thing is, can you show up consistently and deliver consistently? Because that's really what makes you a professional. By definition, professional is someone who does something as their main paid occupation, Vikram. And in order to do anything and get paid consistently, you must be delivering some type of consistent results. Because otherwise, nobody's going to keep paying you. A boss wouldn't keep paying you and a customer wouldn't keep paying. So you have to be consistently producing results, which means you have to show up consistently and perform. But being that we're human beings, Vikram, we all have days that we don't really feel like working, where we don't feel good. Maybe things are not working. Maybe the last 3 days haven't been so good. Maybe where our mind is on something that's coming up in the future. So how do we make sure that we can show up consistently and deliver? We need to have a system or a process for that. We can't just depend on motivation or just making ourselves do it, because we're human and we're not perfect. So I have a whole framework about that called the 3rd day. So I don't know if we're getting into that now, but I'm sure we'll talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So Dre, tell me your origin story. You should have been a basketball player, maybe gone to the NBA, maybe stayed in college, but you eventually maybe played internationally. But now you're a business tycoon. You're an entrepreneur. You're a coach. You're a best-selling author. How many books is it that you've written?
Officially 35.
That is crazy prolific work, guys. I know I'm trying to write my first book right now. I know how hard it is. This man in front of me here on this podcast, guys, 35 crazy books, freaking books. That's amazing. So what made the shift? What is the number one thing that made the shift from you being this traditional life that we thought you would be, which is an athlete, and maybe you would have been a trainer or you would have, coached a team or something. Now You're becoming this high-skilled entrepreneur. You remind me of like a Tim Grover, where he became a trainer of the best, right? He trained, Michael Jordan. He trained Kobe Bryant. And now this guy's become a business tycoon, and he's helping people really accelerate in multiple disciplines.
Yeah, so I appreciate the compliment. The thing for me was I getting into basketball pretty late. I was about 14 when I really started to focus on basketball after playing a bunch of other sports. And 14 is pretty late if you want to play in college, let alone play pro. So it wasn't guaranteed that I was even going to make it to either of those levels. So I only played 1 year high school ball. I walked on to play Division III college ball, which is the 3rd tier, and most pros are coming out of the Division I level, the stuff you see on TV. That wasn't us. So I had to kind of hustle my way into pro ball, just marketing and selling myself just to get an agent, first of all, and then for that agent to sell me to a team and get me my first contract. And then I had to do that multiple times over the course of my career just to keep my career going. And the reason why I had that marketing and sales mindset is because I was always into sales. And once I came across the concept of it, and I'll tell you where that came from in a moment. Once I came across the concept of it, I love the idea of what they call unlimited income potential, where your income was not based on just showing up and giving a certain number of hours, but it was based on the more value you create, the more money you make. And I always thought when I heard that, I thought to myself, Vikram, well, if I'm performing better than other people, I should make more money than them. We shouldn't all make the same amount if we're not performing at the same level. It doesn't make sense. So I was always into that. And then where that came from was in college. This is about 2002. I graduated college in 2004. 2002, I got introduced to, well, this guy had a bulletin board posting that said, make some income on the side in the summertime. I responded to it, and this guy was actually a network marketer. Now, I did not build a business in network marketing, but I went to some of the meetings. And in those meetings, these guys introduced this concept of, first of all, personal development. They said, if you're going to build a business, you got to build yourself too, because your business can't grow any further than you grow. And I said, that makes perfect sense. I never heard anyone say that, but it made perfect sense. And the other thing they said was, you have to learn the concepts of how business works. Like all the meeting, anybody been to a network marketing meeting, you know, about 80% of the meeting is them just teaching you basic concepts of entrepreneurship and why that's a better idea than maybe what you were doing before you came to the meeting. So they then would tell you go buy the books when you leave the room. So outside, there were personal development books by like Tony Robbins and Jim Rohn and Napoleon Hill and Brian Tracy, these people I'd never heard of. And also there's a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, which I went and bought. And that book is actually what put me into the mindset of entrepreneurship. And even though I did not go into, as I said, didn't go into network marketing, didn't become an entrepreneur when I read the book, I knew I wanted to play basketball first. But I said, when basketball's over, this is what I'm going to do next. So I just kept it in the back of my mind for damn near 10 years. So it was about halfway through my basketball career when at one point I was a free agent, phone wasn't ringing. And that's when I started thinking, hey, how can I use this entrepreneur stuff that I learned in that book? How can I apply it to, at that point, I had a little audience on social media. So that's when I started creating and selling my own products. So that's where it kind of started, the entrepreneurship mentality.
That's phenomenal. So it's really, you planted the seeds, you started taking in all this education, knowledge, resources, mentorship, and you put in the back of your mind. And yeah, that's exactly what happened to me. Like I had started learning all these skills while I was practicing medicine, but I was like, all right, not yet. And you still practice, but you know, and I would sometimes do things on the side, like you're building your audience on the side, you're doing things on the side. And then what made you shift all in?
Well, the first thing was when I started creating those products, and these products, it's not like I was selling $10,000 courses. I was selling $4.99 training programs to basketball players. That's how I started. And I had read The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss,
Yes.
which is kind of like the digital version of Rich Dad Poor Dad for the digital era. And at that point, I had a little audience on the internet, so I was going to sell my products on the internet. I wasn't getting into real estate like Kiyosaki, but the principle still applied. So when I started to go all in was when I made my first sale. So when I made my first sale, the night I put a little YouTube video out and said, hey, I have this new website. You can get training programs, because I had all these players following me and asking for help. And when I made my first sale, I thought to myself, well, I know I'm not going to be able to jump 40 inches in the air forever. Hopefully I can for a few more years, but I know this doesn't last forever. But this thing that I just did, I had an idea in my head. I turned it into something tangible. I told people about it, and I put a price tag on it, and someone gave me money for it. I said, I can do that forever, because I got more than one idea. I had one product, but I had 1,000 ideas. So I said, if I can just keep doing this, I can do this forever. This is my retirement plan here. So if I never play basketball again, if I can get good at doing this will last a lot longer. So that's when I decided to go all in, but I still kept playing basketball for another 5 years. So this was only halfway through my career when that happened. But the second half of my career, good thing about being a pro athlete is that our long days are about 4 hours of work, and those are rare. So we got a lot of free time on our hands. So this is why you see basketball players or athletes making rap albums and doing all kinds of dumb stuff, because we don't have anything else to do. All right. So I was on the websites making training programs and creating courses and doing all and writing books. So that's when I started doing that. So by the time I stopped playing in 2015, Vikram, I wasn't the normal athlete transitioning, because I wasn't starting at zero that day and trying to figure out what's the next phase of my life. I'd already started on the next phase of my life 5 years earlier. So I already had an audience, I had books, I had programs, I had courses, and I had a framework. This work on your game thing, I was talking about that while I was still playing. So when I stopped playing, all I did was drop the basketball training, and now I can go all in on all the other stuff.
So Dre, let's talk about, my audience is a ton of doctors out there, and they're all in entrepreneurship. They're scaling their practices. They're starting other businesses, coaches, consultants, and they're really out there. They're really embodying this name Limitless, and they're going for it. Give some advice of a person who's in the grind, doing their main career or profession. How do they get the energy, the drive, the ambition, and the stamina to do things on the side, knowing that one day it's going to all pay off?
That's a great question. I think the first place you can start, which is low friction for anybody, is to just get the information. Just start reading, get information, or listen to a podcast, or subscribe to somebody, or follow somebody on social media who's already talking about those things. So you can have that material dripping on you even while you're doing other things. So for me, the first time I ever invested in any type of real serious professional development was I was in my probably over the age of 30. But I could read books. A book is $20. So I read 1,000 books because you can get access to a book very easily. And these days, now you can watch YouTube. Now you can listen to podcasts. Now you can subscribe to people's free stuff, whatever it is that they're putting out. So you can at least have the material dripping on you, even if you're not ready to make a big investment, whether time, energy, or money investment in things. So the first place to start is to go listen to people who are already in that space. And if they have free stuff, which they probably do, subscribe to that. And if they have a book, go buy it. And whoever they tell you that they read, go read that. So everybody can start there.
Yes, I love that. And then, you know, as they're making progress, where would you recommend next? How do they keep climbing that ladder?
The next level is to make the investment. So go find yourself a conference that you can go to. Go find a coach who you can hire. Go find a program that you can jump into and start getting the actual strategic and systematic processes that you can follow to actually go and do the thing. So whatever the thing is you're trying to do. One of the biggest challenges that I see with a lot of entrepreneurs these days, I don't know how it is with doctors, but I see it with a lot of entrepreneurs, is that they try too much do it yourself. It's way too much do it yourselfing out there. And the challenge with it is not that it's a bad idea to want to do it, period. But when you're trying to do it yourself and you don't have the information, you end up using too much time to get to an outcome that you could have got to a lot faster had you just used your money to buy time.
Yeah.
So
Dre, that's the ignorance tax you're talking about.
Yes, exactly.
They pay the ignorance tax versus getting a pass and fast tracking through the ignorance.
That's right.
And using someone else's knowledge and expertise and leaning on that. So you start from where they ended versus starting from scratch.
Right. And that tax is in time. And a lot of people don't understand the value. People don't have a emotional acceptance of the value of time. We logically understand it when I say time is more valuable than money, because you can be broke and make money back. But if you go broke time-wise, you're dead. Right. So and people understand that logically, but they don't understand it emotionally. So then they continually make the mistake of paying with their time when they should just use money instead.
So, Dre, you were talking about something really cool. You said, you know, there's a creator version of you, and then there's the employee version of you. And, you know, I was listening to this podcast by this guy named Myron. I forgot his last name, but he's really an amazing speaker. And he talks about, like, you know, for a W-2 employee, it doesn't matter how much money they make. When they have to pay for something, it's expensive. And, like, for example, a course costs maybe $5,000, or, you know, a first class ticket somewhere costs, you know, $10,000. It kills them, and they're very scarcely mindset, and they're like, I don't know if I should afford this. This is very challenging. In a creator economy, and there's a creator or entrepreneur, they don't think in terms of hours and time. They think, oh, what's the value? So they're like, oh, $10,000 for flying first class somewhere, but I may sit next to an entrepreneur, a CEO, an executive who that one connection could be worth millions. Number two, the creator knows that from their mind, they can generate unlimited income, like you're saying.
Right.
While the W-2, the traditional employee knows that to get more money, he has to give up his life energy, which is his time. He has to trade that life energy and time. And that's why that's so expensive for that entrepreneur or that W-2. And so that's so cool that you came across that insight so early in your life.
Yeah, trading hours for dollars is what you're explaining. And when you're trading hours for dollars, then you know exactly how much you have and how much you're going to have. Whereas when you're an entrepreneur, even if you don't have any money, you know, okay, well, I just need to sell this many copies of my product, and you can make a lot of money in a short period of time. You don't have to trade hours just to get money.
Right. And another way I like to think about it is it's linear versus exponential, right?
Exactly. That's right.
You can create one book and you can sell 1 million copies of it, and that's it. Done.
That's right.
While a person has to work, you know, there's only a certain number of hours, no matter how good they are. There's an hourly rate for everyone. The CEO of the hospital, an executive of a company, it doesn't matter. Everyone has their hourly rate. And once they hit that, they're maxed out.
Exactly. So that's why we always want to have some way of earning money that is not capped.
Yes. So let's talk about this third day and the decision, that these professionals take, and talk about some of your frameworks, man. Because I really want to use these frameworks for these high-powered doctors to really crush it in life. The entrepreneurs, the tech investors, all the guys that listen to the podcast, they're looking for that edge, and you have that edge. And what's some of the edges that you teach your clients that they can learn from?
Sure. So the third day, that came from my background in sports. And this is when I was putting a bunch of videos on YouTube, which I still do, but it was basketball videos. I had a basketball audience. And these players noticed that the gym that I worked out in, it always appeared to be empty aside from me, because you didn't hear any other basketballs bouncing besides mine. And that's a rare thing. Anybody who plays basketball in America knows it's hard to find a gym to yourself. And they would ask, well, Dre, how's the gym always empty? Do you own the gym? Do you, reserve it so nobody else can use it? How is it that you always had a gym to yourself? And this is when I started to explain the concept. So the third day is we can use something, for example, let's say as a doctor, you tell your patient, hey, you need to start going to the gym and working out. So the first day they do it, and they're really excited. They got a new trainer they hired. So they got a 25-pack of personal training classes. And the first day they're really excited, doing the workout. The workout kicks their butt because they haven't worked out in a while, but they're excited about it. And they say, hey, I'm doing this. Second day, a little less excited, but they still show up. It's only the second day. Still has that new car smell. And the first top half of their body is sore from day one. Now the trainer works the lower half of their body, so now they're really sore, full body, drag themselves home. They say, I'm doing this. By the third day, Vikram, what happens is the body and mind start having a difference of opinion. Those workout sneakers feel like they made of cement. You really don't want to talk to the smiling person at the front desk. You don't want to hear your personal trainer's mouth. You really don't feel like doing the workout. You are second guessing your entire decision-making process to even do this in the first place. Because by the third day, your lack of self-discipline or whatever you've been doing up to this point basically reintroduces itself. And this is where you get to decide, am I going to seriously do this or do I not want to do it? Because the third day is when the new car smell has worn off, the newness is gone, the novelty of the situation no longer exists, and you realize that this thing that you signed up for is real work. There is some real effort involved. It is not one big party, and it's not all fun and games. Now, the question becomes, what are you going to do? Are you going to keep showing up and delivering as you're supposed to, or are you going to quit and ask out? And this is the reason why there's the difference between the pros and the amateurs, because a professional does not have the option of opting out because you're being paid to do this thing, which means you must show up and deliver. Whereas the amateur has the option of opting out because nobody's paying you by definition. So if you don't show up, nobody can hold you accountable because you don't owe anybody anything. But as a pro, you do. And that's what the third day is about. How do you keep showing up and delivering even when you don't feel like it? So to bring this full circle, this whole concept of the third day came from my answering the questions to these players. The reason that the gym is always empty is because I just show up more often than everybody else who knows about the gym. It's not that gym was hidden off somewhere. Everybody knew where it was. Everybody in Miami knew where that gym was. But they just didn't come to the gym as often as I did, which is why it appeared to always be empty.
That's awesome. I love the persistence. I love the decision that pros make that amateurs are afraid to make. And that's the decision that separates them. So talk to me. So that's the discipline you talked about with the third day. Tell me about the concept of the Super You.
Super You is all about confidence and unlocking and living with your highest level of confidence. And the thing that a lot of people don't understand, because Vikram, a lot of people ask me about confidence. A lot of people want to be confident. Now, most people say that they lack discipline, but if I ask them what's the number one trait that you want, they say confidence. Because people naturally understand that if I'm more confident, I'll believe in myself more, I'll try more things, hopefully do more things, and have more accomplishments. The challenge is people don't know where it comes from, and confidence comes from discipline. Discipline creates confidence. So usually people who are very confident at a thing usually are very disciplined at that thing because they've earned the right to be confident. And all confidence is your belief in your ability to do something, which comes from what? Practice, right? Consistently doing the thing. The more you practice it, you've done it so many times, now you believe in your ability to do it, now you're confident, now you perform. So this concept of the Super You, I'll tell you a quick story about this. There was this kid, he was in high school, his name was Tucker. He was playing on the basketball team. He was maybe the 10th best player on a 12-man team. So this guy's not very good, mediocre on his best day. But one day in practice, the coach comes in and says, today, we're going to do an experiment. I'm going to have each one of you pretend to be somebody else in practice. So I'm going to have you're going to be him, you be him, you be him. He goes down the line and tells everybody who they're going to pretend to be. Mm-hmm. He says, whatever that guy that you're pretending to be does well, you do it today so you can show him how he is. And whatever he does poorly, whatever mistakes he's always making, you do that as well. So you're going to show each other who you are. Yeah. And this was the coach's way of just letting the players know that don't think that what I say to you is I'm not the only one who sees it. Your teammates see it too, and they're going to show you today. So I don't have to say it. So this guy Tucker, as through random assignment, he gets assigned to be his teammate Mike, who happens to be the best player on the team. So this guy's 10th best player on the team, but because of the coach's, experiment, he's told that he has to be the best player on the team today. So let me ask you, Vikram, how do you think he played?
Phenomenal.
Yeah, so I usually ask this to audiences when I speak, and it's usually divided. I say, who thinks he played great, who thinks he played terrible, who thinks he was just average.
Mindset is everything, as you know, Dre.
Yeah, so he played great. He played amazing that day. And he said he was doing moves that he never did before. He was making shots that he never even tried before. His teammates are looking at him slapjaw like, yo, where's this coming from? Because he had never done any of this stuff before. Yeah. And he had tapped into what I call the super you. Now, here's the key to this whole story and the super you is that did he just out of nowhere all of a sudden just develop all these skills? And the answer is no, he didn't.
He had it inside him all along.
Yeah, the skills were always in him, right? But he didn't have the confidence to bring them out. And what confidence is about, yes, it's about putting yourself out there boldly and authentically and believing in yourself and trying things and all of that. But you can't just say that to somebody and they automatically start doing it. What confidence is also about, and this is a piece that rarely gets mentioned, Vikram, is giving yourself permission to no longer conform to being the person that you've always been. And that's the key to the super you, is allowing yourself to step out of the box that you have put yourself in and that other people are seeing you in because you put yourself there. So what Tucker had done that day was, through the coach's assignment, is he had permission to stop being the 10th best player on the team and be the best player on the team because someone told him to do it.
Yeah.
Now, for all of us, being that we're not high school basketball players, we had to choose to step out of that box of who we've been and be somebody other than ourselves, let's say. Does that make sense?
That's one of the most powerful things of having a coach, like on the team, or a coach, in your life, or a business coach or a professional coach, is sometimes, you're talking about this confidence loop, or and the more competent you are, the more expertise you show, the more discipline you have. Obviously, you're going to be more confident, and then that makes you want to work harder. And it's a virtuous cycle. The problem is sometimes that original confidence is never, it's so low that it doesn't drive enough action. And so one of the things I've seen is in my own life, and because people have mentored me and I get to mentor others, is you get to borrow confidence sometimes. And so when a coach or a mentor believes in you so strongly that sometimes it's even more powerful than your own belief, you can just lean on that belief. You can borrow it. You can use it because you're like, man, I don't want to let that person down. Or that person really believes in me. Maybe, or that is true. And then eventually you can use it to overcome your limiting beliefs, and you start eventually adopting that belief as well. And so you'll use that temporarily as a crutch while you're building your own belief system and your discipline and your confidence and your competence. So it's one of the most powerful reasons to have a coach or mentor.
Absolutely. And that borrowing your confidence thing is another piece that I even talk about with the super you. Because somebody says, well, how do I get started? I can practice, but I never played in the game. So how do I get the confidence in the game? Well, I say, well, who's your favorite player? How would they walk onto the court? What would they believe about themselves? What would they be saying to themselves? Borrow that energy. Don't try to be them. Just borrow that energy. Then after you do it, now you have yourself as an example. So you can use you after you use them.
Right. Awesome. Right. And your last two frameworks that you wanted to share are mental toughness and the personal initiative. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so the mental toughness is all about how do you maintain the discipline and the confidence even when doing all the quote unquote right things aren't working. So let's say someone told you all you had to do is these 8 steps and you followed the 8 steps to the letter and you still didn't get the result. Will you continue to show up or will you quit? And what happens with most people, in my experience, Vikram, is that they quit. Most people just give up so easily on things that if you can just continually show up, even when you're not getting the results, you will end up getting opportunities to fall in your lap just by showing up. And mental toughness is all about persistence and consistency and stick-to-itiveness and grit and all those words that you hear people talk about. And mental toughness is kind of like the security guard for your mental health, because mental health is just about the human condition. Where are we at? How do we feel? And the more mentally tough you are, the better you can withstand whatever comes at you in life, because we all understand no matter how hard you work, how talented you are, how many resources you have access to, eventually we all run into situations where things are not going as expected. So what do you do in those moments? And again, in my experience as an athlete, also with entrepreneurs and just with people in general, is that most people are so quick to crumble and quit and fall to pieces when things are not going their way, that usually the most successful people are usually the people who are just the toughest and the grittiest and have the highest level of willingness to keep going even when it's not working.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So as we wrap up here, Dre, tell me, sort of what's your mission that you have for the world, and what do you want to accomplish? And then let's talk about how people can learn about you, get into your ecosystem, and potentially, learn about all the things you serve and share.
Our mission here at Work on Your Game is to make Work on Your Game ubiquitous when it comes to personal and professional development. We want it to be the thing that people bring up. Same way they say, just do it. And we're talking about Nike. Or somebody says, make a copy, and someone says Xerox. We want Work on Your Game to be that when it comes to personal and professional development. So that's the goal, and that's the mission, is why we want to talk to people like you and people like who you have in your audience. And as far as reaching me, we can give everyone a free copy of our book called The Third Day, The Decision That Separates the Pros from the Amateurs. We already talked about this. I give you a free copy of the paperback version, physically mailed to you. Just go to thirddaybook.com. All we ask is that you cover the shipping. We will pay for the book. So again, thirddaybook.com, spelled out, and book's free. We'll cover the shipping, so you can learn how to show up and give your best effort when you least feel like it. As far as social media, I'm on Instagram at Dre Baldwin.
That's awesome. Guys, that's a generous offer here at thirddaybook.com. If you want Dre Baldwin's book, it's gonna be phenomenal. It has all the principles we talked about and much, much more. Follow him on his social media. Everything will be in the show notes. Dre, man, that's awesome. And who's a mentor right now that you really look up to, that you think other people would probably want to learn more about?
Dan Kennedy, I like the best right now. I think awesome. From what I've heard you say, you sound like you've heard some Dan Kennedy stuff. So
yeah. Dan is the GOAT, guys. He's the GOAT. So
yeah, so I'm a big fan of his stuff. I came around a little bit, later than his prime years, but I'm going through all his old stuff. So yeah, he's the best.
Awesome. All right, guys. Thanks again for joining in. Thanks for making the podcast grow and the YouTube channel grow. Appreciate you all. Be phenomenal.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Limitless MD. If you found value from this episode, I encourage you to share this episode with a friend and let me know by leaving a review. For more information, make sure you check out the links in the show notes below, or simply visit vikramraya.com. Until next time, be phenomenal.